He smashed it. $10 million masterpiece, destroyed in a single second. Why? Because under a microscope, he found a mistake the size of a single atom. We live in a world that demands perfection. We filter our photos, we edit our lives, and we hide our scars. But what if I told you that the very thing you trying to hide is actually your greatest strength? This is the story of Elias Thorne, the man who tried to be God and learned the hard way that to be perfect is to be dead. Elias Thorne was not just a watchmaker. In the high society circles of New York and Geneva, he was revered as the architect of time. He didn't just build clocks, he built legacies. His waitlist stretched for 5 long years. Kings, tech billionaires, and Hollywood icons practically begged for a Thorne original. But behind the curtain of success, Elias was a deeply miserable man. He lived in a stunning penthouse overlooking the Manhattan skyline, a glass box that felt more like a sterile laboratory than a home. He had no wife, no children, no real friends, only his work. His entire life revolved around a single obsession: absolute zero. A theoretical state of mechanical perfection where friction, wear, and error simply did not exist. For the last 10 years, Elias had poured every ounce of his being into his magnum opus. He called it the Aeterna. It was a pocket watch unlike any other, encased in meteorite iron and sapphire crystal, containing a movement so complex that leading mathematicians said it shouldn't be physically possible. The Aeterna was set to be unveiled at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in just 3 days. Its price tag? Priceless. This wasn't just a watch. It was his final proof that man could transcend nature. That man, through sheer will and precision, could finally be perfect. It was 3 a.m. on a Tuesday, 72 hours before the unveiling. The city below was asleep, bathed in a soft glow of rain and neon light. Elias sat hunched over his workbench, a jeweler's loupe pressed tightly to his eye. The silence in his penthouse workshop was deafening, broken only by the sound of his own shallow, anxious breathing. He was performing the final inspection. To the naked eye, the Aeterna was flawless. It seemed to hum with a heartbeat that felt impossibly alive. But Elias wasn't looking with the naked eye. He was using a high-powered digital microscope, its feed displayed on a large monitor. He scanned the main gear. Perfect. He scanned the balance spring. Perfect. He scanned the escapement lever, and then he froze. There, on the underside of a tiny ruby Beringa spot, no human eye would ever see, a spot that affected the timekeeping by less than a nanosecond per decade, was a scratch. It was microscopic. It's a tiny, jagged canyon in a landscape of otherwise smooth, polished perfection. Elias gasped, pulling away from the table as if the watch had physically burned him. "No," he whispered, his voice trembling. "No, no, no." He began to pace the room, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. To anyone else, the watch was the pinnacle of human achievement. But Elias knew. He knew the scratch was there. It was a failure. It made him a fraud. A white-hot rage overtook him. He grabbed a heavy brass caliper from his workbench. He stood over the $10 million watch, his hand trembling with a mixture of fury and despair. He was going to smash it. If it wasn't perfect, it didn't deserve to exist. "I wouldn't do that if I were you." The voice was rough, like gravel grinding on concrete. Elias spun around, the caliper raised like a weapon. Standing in the doorway of his workshop was the night janitor, an elderly man named Silas. Silas had been cleaning the building for 20 years, but in all that time, Elias had never spoken a single word to him. Silas leaned casually on his mop, looking at the trembling billionaire with calm, tired eyes. "Get out," Elias snapped, his voice sharp and brittle. "You're fired. Get out of my home." Instead, he gestured with his chin toward the watch. "That's the Aeterna, isn't it? It's the one everyone is talking about on the news." "It's garbage," Elias spat, his voice cracking under the strain. "It's ruined. Why?" "Because it has a scratch?" Elias screamed, the pressure finally breaking him. "A scratch on the ruby bearing. It's flawed. It's not perfect." Silas stopped a few feet away. He didn't seem impressed by the luxury or intimidated by the anger. He simply rolled up the sleeve of his gray uniform. His arm was a roadmap of a life fully lived, covered in scars. There were old burn marks, jagged white lines, and faded tattoos. See this? Silas pointed to a long, jagged scar running down his forearm. Got this in '68. Saved my brother from a falling beam on a construction site in this one. He pointed to a small, puckered burn on the back of his hand. Pulled a stranger out of a car wreck 20 years ago. Elias lowered the caliper slowly, his anger giving way to confusion. What is your point? My point, Mr. Thorne, Silas said softly, is that if I didn't have these scars, I'd just be a blank sheet of paper. I wouldn't have a story, wouldn't have lived. Silas walked over to the desk and looked down at the gleaming watch. You're trying to make a machine that never fails, he said, his voice gentle but firm. But the only things that never fail are things that are already dead. Machines are perfect. People are beautiful because they break and because they heal. Silas turned to leave, pausing at the door. If you smash that watch, you aren't destroying a mistake. You're destroying the only thing about it that makes it real. The night of the unveiling, the Metropolitan Museum was packed. Cameras flashed like a summer lightning storm. The wealthiest, most influential people on the planet held champagne flutes, their voices a low hum of anticipation as they waited for the curtain to rise. Elias Thorne stepped onto the stage. He looked exhausted. He hadn't slept in 3 days. He wore an immaculate tuxedo, but his tie was slightly crooked or rare. Almost unthinkable oversight for a man defined by his precision. He approached the podium. The room went silent. Ladies and gentlemen, Elias began, his voice echoing through the grand hall. For 10 years, I have chased perfection. I wanted to build something that could outlast time itself, something without error. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the Aeterna. It caught the spotlight, shimmering like a captured star. The crowd let out a collective audible gasp. But 3 nights ago, Elias continued, his voice steady, I found a scratch, a microscopic flaw. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Investors in the front row exchanged nervous glances. I almost destroyed it, Elias admitted, his honesty hanging in the air. I thought that because it was flawed, it was worthless. But then, I realized something. Elias held the watch up high for everyone to see. Perfection is a lie we tell ourselves to feel safe. We think if we are perfect, we won't be hurt. If we are perfect, we won't be lonely. But perfection is cold, it is sterile, it is lonely. He looked out at the faces in the audience, seeing not just clients, but people. This watch has a scratch, it has a scar. And because of that, it is unique. It is the only one of its kind in the universe. It is not a machine of God anymore. It is the work of a man. Elias placed the watch on its velvet pedestal. I present to you the Aeterna, the imperfect masterpiece. The silence in the room lasted for 5 long seconds. Elias held his breath, expecting a disaster, expecting booing, expecting his entire career to crumble. Then one person started clapping, then another, and the whole room erupted. It wasn't the polite, reserved applause of high society. It was a roar of genuine, heartfelt emotion. The watch sold that night for $40 million, 4 times its estimated price. The buyer wasn't a tech billionaire looking for flawless precision. It was a famous artist who said she bought it because of the story of the scratch. Elias Thorne never made another perfect watch again. He started a new line, creating pieces that celebrated imperfection, using raw, uncut stones and beautifully asymmetric designs. He made watches that looked like they had lived a life. And Elias became happier. He befriended Silas, the janitor who had saved him. He reconnected with his estranged family. He finally understood that the pressure to be perfect wasn't a standard to live up to, but a cage he had built for himself. And by embracing his own flaws, he finally became free. Thank you for watching. If this story resonated with you, consider subscribing for more just like it.